So we've got a situation where we need, in order to get disks, in order to get a decent amount of storage, you need a medium that holds more data and also something that you can access it much faster. And then once you can bolt that onto that machine, then you could use it for data processing. Well, fortunately, several companies, and this is a company called Bryant, brought out a sort of double cabinet. You can see the lady there, so you can get some idea of the size of it. Just like two of those Elliott cabinets there. And those two cabinets held 24 hard disks. Now, as a museum, we get given most things. We don't buy anything with any money. So no one's ever given us one of these. So I'm afraid we can't show you one of these, which is a shame. And I doubt very much if any still exist. However, on one of the tours about 6 months ago, one of the people here said, I've got a disc that came out of that, and I use it for a coffee table, would you like it? So we said yes, so I shall wheel it out.
Wheel it out? It's the way you laugh, Sally.
That's the hard disc that came out of the unit. Now, if you open the door of the cabinet, and I can't do it physically, you've got there all the discs stored vertically, and there's a blurred thing which is actually all the heads that move in and out together. So here are the heads that move in and out of the disc all together, can you see? Yeah. They all move together. So the same technique was used on this, in other words they invented it, and that allowed you to get any bit of data on any one of the discs in 1/10 of a second. Now that's pretty impressive compared to 4 minutes from that. So straight away you've got instant access to any bit of data on any of the discs. The second question is, how much storage was there on these discs? Well, that camera there probably does 4 megabyte JPEGs as an image. But how many do you think you get on each side of the disc? How many digital images on the disc? Who guessed the price of the machine?
So 1K.
1,000 images. 1,000. Well, no, one image.
That's okay.
It's actually 4 megabytes per side. So you get one image on each side. But let's wipe that from your mind. Forget digital images and forget music. If you want to store that, that's complicated. If you want to store raw data, that's 8,000 Milton Keynes names and addresses on there. And you've got 24 discs, and you've got 2 sides on each. So you've got 200 megabytes of storage on that, which is a phenomenal amount in terms of actual data storage. You know, you'd have to be a really, really big company to require that amount of data storage. Well, interestingly enough, that was mid-60s. In 1980, this is the ICL 2966, and these discs here hold 200 megabytes. So they hold the same on there as this cabinet held. So
on each disc?
On each disc, yes. No, not on each layer, on the whole pack. Yeah. These are 80 megabytes, and that's 200 megabytes. So that's 0.2 of the gigabyte. So that means on one of these discs like this, if this was a terabyte hard drive, there'll be 2,500 of these on here. Okay, so now let's assume you're a company and you need that sort of storage. You would need 2,500 of these washing machines in order to hold these discs if they were all fixed in place. And each of these washing machines cost the price of a car. So you obviously couldn't do that. So that's why they had to make them removable. In other words, you have to be able to take them out and put them in. And that means in the 1980s they had a computer here that's everything in the room other than these cabinets here is one computer system. It consumes 40 kilowatts, this is the power of all these, and you obviously need another 40 kilowatts of air conditioning. You have a room that's all air conditioned so that it's cool and dust free. People have to wear special clothing to come in and out, or dust retention pads. And very expensive to run. Only a really big company could afford that. Because also there would be 6 or 7 computer operators in here, and those operators would spend their day taking the discs out. The console would say, it's not for playing games, it's just got text which come out and it says, go and get disc number 122 and put it into hopper number 44. So an operator would dash off and know where it was, come along and put it in here. And the majority of computer operators were women. So is would you like to pick that up? Imagine doing all day long, having to pick it up. Go on, have a go. Right, you have to do that every day, dozens of times a day.
Oh my goodness.
So you probably end up as a swimmer with these huge arms. So, but computer operator was quite a glamorous job. A couple of my friends were computer operators, and I thought, oh, that's a marvellous job, but it was a bit physical. So, so that's the 1980s, and this also is the only 2966 left anywhere in the world. So again, even up until that day, right up all the way through, computers get scrapped and they're not used anymore.
Who's the maker? Who was the maker of that?
ICL.
ICL.
Right. And this was given to us by a company in Wolverhampton called Tarmac Industries.
Oh, right.
So they would do it for job costings, billing, payroll, all the kind of things they did. And before we got hold of it, they dumped it in the car park, which you can see all the rust on the top of things. But at least we've got it, and most of it works. So.
Did they leave the data on the discs?
Well, it's taken us a couple of years to get it working. We still have to boot it from a laptop, but it will work. On that desk there's the laptop. Because it can't access the main hard drive with the operating system that's called George on it straight away. So you boot into that drive, then it can find it.
How had it been booted originally then?
Oh, straight from that hard drive.
But there's a problem with that disk.
Yes,
So,
yes, we just can't do it. The other problem is, of course, how many ICL engineers are there around with that level of knowledge who actually live locally and can spend any time doing it? So that's the problem. So if you're skillful, if anyone is brave enough to say, "Oh, I'm an ICL engineer," then I've got some handcuffs in my pocket, and we don't let you out. So a quick look at this one before we move on to another room.
No, it would always be the same price.
We don't have a problem with IBM. In fact, we like IBM. They've given us quite a bit of money. But very shortage of IBM equipment. There's an IBM set up here, and there's some others in another room as we go by. And that's because IBM only leased their equipment to companies, so that when the company finished, they took it back. You couldn't keep it. Well, you could buy it off them, but it wasn't cost effective. They wanted you to buy some more kit. So there's quite a shortage of IBM stuff. This is another American manufacturer called Digital Equipment Corporation. This is a DEC PDP-11. It looks quite small, it is quite small, but it's actually very long. And this is the mid-70s. So in the 1970s, here are two workstations from 40 that were in West Drayton Air Traffic Control Centre. And if you were flying out of Heathrow in the 70s, your flight would have been on here. And 10 years before home computers, this had a trackable. Move the cursor around the screen. Very high resolution graphics, obviously. Touch sensitive pads, so you could change the display. But in the 70s, the computers didn't have graphics cards, so if you wanted to do that level of graphics, you had to have another computer to do the graphics. So every one of these has two computers running it, two PDP-11s, and so there's another two here for that one. So in 1970s, there would have been 80 computers running the 40 workstations in one room, and 10 years before, only 400 in the whole of Britain. So, you know, because of the reduction in cost and the size, things are moving on quite rapidly. This kind of resolution graphics would cost, this is an Ericsson display, even in the 70s about 3 or 4 family cars just for one screen, about £15,000, and we're used to sort of what, £80 or something like that, and the resolution on here could easily be done with a modern display. So if you had a computer at home in the 70s, you wouldn't have done because you couldn't have ordered it, that's the kind of screen you would have had to have. So we've got one out here so you can see what size high resolution monitors would need to be if so that's quite a...
And that's a hell of a heatsink.
It's pretty big, isn't it? Yes, and one on the other side as well. So you've got a situation really where computers are coming down in size, even though you need two of them. Things like the screens are not at the moment. Disk drives are held in various units here, getting smaller, tapes and so on. So let's have a look at the next, move on from disks. Oh yes, yes, yes.
And that's the first. Yes. That was the first access I had to
Computers.
So much stuff.
Point out, this is the computer, not a similar one. This is the computer that used to monitor our side of the nuclear test ban treaty. In the 60s and 70s, there were 4 nuclear nations: France, Britain, America, and Russia, and we all were embarking on underground testing of nuclear weapons. and we wanted to check that there wasn't a Third World War starting, because we all told each other that we were going to do testing and when we would do them. So in order to check that we were all telling the truth and so on, they planted seismometers right behind your head, not literally, but on the map there, lots of red blobs on the map. And those seismometers sent out voltages down the wires, and they came along to the 4 computers in the world. Our one was in Scotland, and it came into this analog to digital converter here, Cullen Laboratories A to D converter. It was converted into a digital signal into the PDP-11, another tag, and that was what it produced. Okay, and that trace was then analysed by that computer to see if it was an earthquake or a nuclear explosion.
When was that? When?
It was given to us, I think, in it finished use in '83.
Right.
But it was in use from the mid-60s. So that's the trace. So there, was that a nuclear explosion or an earthquake?
That's an explosion.
No, it's an earthquake. I'm cheating really, because that's 20 seconds between each of these verticals, so it's taking a long time to decay. So I think it's quite obvious that it's not a nuclear explosion. But I imagine that there must be cases where a nuclear explosion might trigger earth tremors, and therefore they could carry on. So the computer itself would do the analysis to work out what it was.
I thought.
So do they still monitor underground explosions?
Yes, they do, but they've got many more seismometers around the world just for earthquake testing, so they just use that system.
They use the same thing that they use for earthquakes?
Yes. So that really was the forerunner, because that started to pick up. So, and this one here is a computer that was used in the 1960s and put in a BAC 111, and there's a picture of it in the fuselage, and it was done by the Royal Aircraft Establishment at Bedford, and they connected up to all the aircraft's controls and sensors, and this developed the first automatic landing system.
Right.
So you've got this to thank when your pilot's fallen asleep and it lands automatically, and the original research was done on this. This is an analog computer. And analog computers, in the time that these were used, which was the mid-60s and very early 70s, the only way you could deal with a computer was paper, tape or punch cards. They didn't have screens attached to them. So here you've got a screen attached to it. I know it's an oscilloscope rather than an ordinary screen, but at least it's visual. And the point is that if you can model something using differential equations, in other words, something that gradually changes perhaps with time, then you can mimic it, model it on this. So we've set up a differential equation here which models a mass spring damper system. So if you're a car designer and you want to find a spring system that's nice and comfortable for your car, then you can design the parameters on this. So that's how we set it up at the moment. So you program this computer by wiring it up. Electronic circuits can mimic integration, multiplication, addition. So that's the way it's programmed, and the data's fed in with these knobs. So here I'm Ford, and I've developed a nice new car, and the spring that I've put on it, when you hit a bump, does that. Doing, 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 doing. So you go out for a test drive in it, you feel violently sick, and you certainly don't buy it, do you? So what you want to do is you want a spring system that will go back up. A spring system that will decay nice and quickly and perhaps not go on. So all you're doing, you're fiddling around with the parameters of the equation by changing the numbers here. Let's close it up a bit. Oh dear, we've got a problem with the thing. Let's try and close it up a bit so maybe like that. So now you hit a bump, and 1, 2, 3 bumps later it's stabilised. So you go bump, dum, dum, dum. Now if it went bump and then one bump and stopped, it would be like a Grand Prix car. It's solid as a rock. So you spend a bit of time, maybe 10 minutes, quarter of an hour, for getting the kind of thing you want, because each of these will be calibrated. You then read the values off these knobs here, got the scales on, feed them back in the equation, you've got your answer. And that can take minutes, shall we say, compared to days on a digital computer. Because like digital computer, you keep on having to feed the paper tape in, get a printed answer that was wrong, try another value and so on. This feedback loop would take ages. So that's an analog computer. So we'll go and have a look at some punch cards.